Hello and welcome to the LA Venture Podcast. We're David Waxman and Minnie Ingersoll, partners and investors at TenOneTen.
David is back. Thank goodness.
Hello.
And we are on Zoom with special guest Jason Schoettler from Calibrate Ventures. Calibrate's an $80 million fund, writing checks in the $3 to $6 million range, meaning that Series A is probably the sweet spot there. Jason, David, how are you both?
Great.
It's great. Lovely to be here with you guys.
As Jason says, it's COVID day 46.
Jason, did I get the basics of Calibrate right in that introduction, mostly focused on B2B?
Yeah, we're a Series A venture capital firm that invests in advanced automation and typically invest in companies when they've got signs of early commercial success and view our job as one to help them scale, through 20 million in revenue and through hundreds of millions if we're doing our jobs right and working with the right folks. So it's a great place, we think, in all time, but especially right now, to be investing in that space.
And my understanding is that you have a pretty concentrated portfolio. Is that correct?
Yeah, we founded Calibrate with the belief that it's small funds typically outperform, and also the concentration is a way to generate outsized returns. And so we designed our first fund with $80 million to invest in 12 to 15 companies and really lean into our winners. And so we do run a typically more concentrated portfolio than some other funds of the same size.
Got it. And how do you? I mean, that's not that many shots on goal.
We've been very lucky to have some great exits as a result of concentration and really leaning into our winners. A couple here in Southern California, like Ring and Dollar Shave Club, which were both outstanding. And so, we've also had situations where we've lost stuff, but we've been able to pick some good winners and have been disciplined in our follow-on capital, which is where it really matters with concentration. And
do you then have seed funds that are like good feeders for you? Should we be sending you all our advanced automation companies?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been building our network for 17 years. One of the things that makes us an attractive partner to both seed managers and to founders is that investing out of a small fund with relatively small capital, we're not investing in $30 million Series A rounds. We're investing in rounds that are 5 to 15 million generally, and we're trying not to overwhelm either the cap table or the boardroom in that regard. So we've had a lot of success doing a lot of repeat business with some seed funds and are always looking to build out new relationships.
So someone is raising 5 to 15 million usually. What is a Series A valuation typically pre-COVID, and what do you think it'll be post-COVID?
I mean, there is a range. I think we've seen everything from the kind of low teens to upwards of 50, 60, 70. And I think it will be lower as we get into COVID in general. I think there's going to be less capital, and I think the supply and demand means that you'll end up with a little bit lower valuations in the period ahead.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot and discussing it with other VCs. There's a question in my mind of how long it takes to get that valuation reset, because there's money in the system that's waiting to be deployed.
A lot of it's going to depend on how long we're in this period of sheltering in place and how long it takes for founders to get a read on what the path out of this looks like. And I think until we have a real good handle on that, I think we'll see less capital flowing, and just because there's going to be a little more uncertainty. But
also, what you said at the beginning was you tend to invest in advanced automation. But advanced automation, I would think, is also something that people will need more of, if not rather than less of, in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, we tend to think that lots of executives and business leaders and technologists are rethinking how they operate, how they run their businesses, and from their homes, right? From their garages, their living rooms, their dining rooms, their bedrooms, as they have really an opportunity to pause and think about business post-COVID. And we think that automation is going to play a key role. And for us, there's two aspects of automation. I mean, software makes everything go, and there's kind of physical automation, and then there's also digital automation. And we think they are both going to play a key role and be accelerated through this as executives and managers look to do more with less. And there's a whole host of really good things that happen when you can turn routine tasks and workflows over to machines to do better, whether it's a computer system or software system or a robotic system.
Is that a change from your kind of prior theses? Because something like Ring, for example.
We've done well in consumer with a host of investments, but I think we've seen the opportunity in more B2B and then B2B to C opportunities, particularly for the advanced automation stuff. And I think the reasons why we see that, I mean, just to be real specific about it, advanced automation, it solves a labor shortage problem. It certainly solves labor immobility problem that we're facing today. It increases and always has, productivity and reduces operating costs. And we think actually promotes safer operations for employees. And that's, I think, if we look at some of our portfolio companies today, we have some in construction and some in agriculture, whereas kind of human labor was a cost and availability issue. It's also now a health and safety issue for many industries as well. And we think that's going to continue in the decade ahead.
It sounds like, I think you said you do invest in hardware, but everyone says sort of don't invest in hardware unless you really know what you're doing.
Well, we think we're pretty good at it. We've got a good track record of investing in hardware. I think you need to know what you're doing when you're investing in hardware. I think we don't invest in hardware businesses that don't have a subscription component to the revenue, for example. That's one of many kind of rules of thumb that we have. I think you also need to be very cognizant of the inventory issues and supply chain issues. And you need to work with great teams that know what they're doing, because it can be a very challenging place to invest. But we're quite enthusiastic about how kind of that's the way software gets into the real world in some cases, right? And that's really exciting for us to be part of that.
Got it. So hardware that still has a subscription. So you're not selling something that doesn't have a subscription. Although I will say, Jason, I just watched this video of this robot. What's its name?
Moxie? Did you check out Moxie? Yeah.
Yes. Does it have a subscription?
It does. It does.
Okay.
I'm out in the cold here. What's a Moxie robot?
I don't know. You got to go watch the video.
Okay.
You'll have to post it on your
I will.
In the notes or somehow. But it was announced yesterday. So in the last 10 years or so, we've made 4 investments in LA. We've invested in Ring and Dollar Shave Club, Evolution Robotics, which was founded by a guy by the name of Paolo Pergiani, and that company was acquired by iRobot. And when Paolo, he became CTO at iRobot for a number of years, and then he left about 4 years ago to start Embodied. And Embodied is about it's an AI and software and robotics platform for care and wellness. And they just announced yesterday, so we're really excited about after all these years getting Moxie out into the wild.
And it's an actual cute little robot.
It's a companion, an animate companion.
Thank you. Sorry, awesome. Didn't mean to get it wrong there. You talked some about automation for new industries versus old industries, and how do you think about investing in big old legacy industries that don't have much tech versus flying cars and people and things?
Well, I think a good way or a good way to address that for us is we've been very interested in autonomous vehicles, but we have not invested in anything that is related to like consumer automobiles that carry people. The way that we have thought about how to play that has been more around ways to, and by the way, there's tons of money that has been made and will be made in kind of autonomous vehicles for the road. But we've taken an approach to say, look, where are some industries where machines can do repetitive tasks and add a tremendous amount of value, because we're taking it cheaper or faster or safer than can be done otherwise. And a couple of examples for us with autonomous vehicles are in both heavy construction equipment, where we have an investment in Built Robotics, as well as with a company called FarmWise that is working in the agriculture space. And the reason we like some of these, we like both of those bets enormously, is because you're operating vehicles on private land, and you can control for a lot more of the variables than you can, driving down, Market Street in San Francisco, for example. But at the same time, these industries have labor shortages and challenges both with the affordability of labor, and they really have because they're not at the forefront and attracting a lot of attention from kind of tech generally. There's a real opportunity to help with some of the leading operators in those spaces to help bring some automation there in a new way, the way that Silicon Valley has done well over the many decades of bringing automation to other industries. And I guess the last point that I would make is that when you look at these industries, one of the big tipping points is the cost point for hardware and software. And that's another important reason why we're comfortable investing in hardware, is because the component costs and the ability to prototype and iterate in scale and the supply chain, those costs have all come down dramatically over the years. And I think they're at a point where it makes a lot of sense to bring them into those industries.
And on the software side, is the software side more traditional automation of sales processes, customer service processes?
Yeah, we've done stuff on the enterprise side that's focused on sales automation, that's focused on connecting customer, stuff that drives revenue for businesses. So for us, it's been around product tools, developer tools, and Salesforce automation. We've looked at and continue to look at lots of things in the AI space, and we'll continue to do that as well.
So I wanted to loop back and ask you about how you work with companies. With a smaller portfolio, you should have more time to spend with them. What is the relationship, and how do you see an optimal way to work with companies?
We lead about 3/4 of the time, and we take a board seat when we lead. One of the lessons that we learned early in our careers, and that I hold very dearly to me, is that it's all about people, and the value of putting people first and realizing that sometimes it can be a lonely walk as a founder. We're founders ourselves. We really do place a premium on working with the CEOs and with the founders, and being there for them when they have issues. I think a lot of the hard work that the best board members do is offline and bringing to bear their operating experience and sharing, tricks of the trade or perspectives that they have offline, and not necessarily in the room. I think that's one big distinction that's appreciated by founders. And I think there are other board members that are very technical, and we find that those folks are really instrumental at the early stages of investing. And then there's, as companies grow and mature and scale, certainly the profile of investor changes as growth investors enter the mix. You typically take a more financial orientation, which is perfectly appropriate as companies, grow and scale.
This may be obvious to both of you guys, but when you join a board, how many people are on the board, and when do you roll off, and how many people are on the board when you roll off?
When we get involved, there's typically anywhere from 3 to 5 directors. Usually there's a founder or 2, and maybe a seed investor or 2 who are on the board. And at the time that we're investing, it typically grows to somewhere between 5 and 7. And as the companies progress through their later financings, we typically roll off as the boards grow. But I'd say it's usually in the 3 to 5 range when we get involved, and then by the time we exit, it's somewhere in the 5 to 7. If it gets larger than that, it gets unwieldy. Is my experience. The fewer, the better.
Interesting. Yeah. I was going to ask you that, which is like, what's a dysfunctional board look like? How can a board really screw things up for a company?
That's a good question. And that's probably, there's a whole podcast series you can, you
Bad
can do
boards
on that.
gone wrong.
But for me, one of the things that I have noticed in my career is when a board, either because a founder has some uncertainty or some lack of clarity about what to do, and goes to the board for advice to help set strategy, right, and really leans on the board to help provide guidance and framework and direction, that's typically been a cause of concern. We love founders to be bold and to have a point of view and to debate it and listen. But if there's a lot of uncertainty around what to do, that can be a problem, because then it invites the board to get involved in more management issues and more executive issues and we've seen that play out badly. And I would say that's that can be a challenge with a founder. The other side of that coin is where boards have a very strong point of view and kind of enforce themselves or insert themselves in the process, which is kind of the same dynamic. But I've been on some boards where, the boards have a particular point of view and want to go, charge that hill as opposed to some other hill. And that makes for rough dynamics as well. So
I find that a really tricky needle to thread. So, because I was always told when coming to my board, don't just come with an update. Don't just come with here are the numbers. They can read that. So bring the real issues that you're actively debating. But I think what you're saying is bring the real issues, but don't look to us for guidance. Just share them.
Well, I think that it is tricky, but I do think that the best board meetings I'm in are when you get through the second slide and then you spend 2.5 hours working the 2 or 3 major issues with the company. Those are very productive. I feel productive when I'm leaving those board meetings, and I know that CEOs feel the same way.
You've mentioned a couple of times that you've been doing this for a really long time, and I know that you were at a different fund prior to Calibrate. Calibrate's pretty new, right?
Yeah, Kevin and I, my partner, founded Calibrate in middle of 2017.
And can we talk a little bit about Schoettler Ventures and what you did before?
Sure. And maybe if I go all the way back just to connect the dots. I mean, I've been in tech all my career. I started as a management consultant for Ernst & Young in Silicon Valley, where I was working for HP and Agilent for a couple of years in the .com kind of late 90s period. And then I was recruited to join a product management role, a startup out of JPL in Caltech that was commercializing software that was used in the Mars Pathfinder mission. And then Schoettler Ventures, which was the largest investor in that startup, recruited me to be the first investment professional. And Schoettler Ventures is a family office that was one of the pioneering venture capital investors going back to the late 1960s. And that was just a tremendous opportunity. We invested off of the family's balance sheet for a number of years, and then ran a couple of funds that included outside investors. Most recently, it was a wonderful place to learn how to be an investor.
Do companies, if there's companies, LA companies that are looking for investment, which is a lot of them, would they go directly to Schoettler Ventures?
I suspect the predominant investments that they're making now are probably later stage and into funds, but they do some co-investing alongside some of their managers as well. They're one of our LPs, so we know them pretty well.
What has changed? How have you changed the most as an investor?
Yeah, I've learned a couple of things in my career as an investor. I've learned that it's all about people. We've talked about that. I'd say being intellectually honest is another big lesson. I think that's something that both Kevin and I try to remind each other the value of that. And I think we've both been really good at sleeping on things and not holding so tightly to preconceived notions, and being open to data, I think, is a really important part of being an investor. And then I'd say this kind of gets to your last question. It's okay to make mistakes. As long as you're learning from them, right? And as long as you're able to fold the learnings into the next investment, because we are going to make mistakes. Our founders are going to make mistakes, and we're going to lose money along the way, but that's part of the business of investing in startups.
Maybe I was poking around your website. It said something like, our decisions are guided by our founding values, not herd mentality.
I think what we mean by that is not feeling as though you're missing out on something, and feeling like you need to invest in XYZ sector or a company that is pursuing XYZ technology or market because everybody else is. So I think we try to be really independent in our thinking, and I wouldn't say we're always contrarian, but there have been times when we've invested in things that weren't obvious, that it turned out to be great great investments. I know that Ring, Jamie has definitely had some dark periods of trying to raise capital, and we invested when he was doing about $3 million in revenue, and it was a great investment at Ring. A lot of people invested in that early on, and a lot of people passed at the time that we were that we invested, and I think we feel really good about not being persuaded by other people saying no to investment or saying yes to investment.
What is, give us dirt on Kevin. What is Kevin like? You talk about being intellectually honest. Like, what are his hot buttons? Where do you guys agree, disagree? What do you push each other on?
Well, he's a mechanical engineer by training and practice. And I'm a liberal arts person by training. And I think we work really well together, because I think there's a quantitative and no BS kind of analysis that Kevin brings to the table, and I think he would agree with that. You'll have to ask him, get him on the show and ask him. And I think there's a bit more of a softer side of things that I sometimes come to the table with. And my kids are a little older and his are a little younger, and so he's feeling a little more under siege at home in quarantine than I am right now. So that's maybe a hot button. But I think we're very different personalities. We're very, very different people, but we're very close friends, and we've been business partners for over 15 years, and there's no one I'd rather be in business with.
Aww.
Aww.
So sweet. Is that so there's you and Kevin, obviously you guys are, BFF. Who else how's the rest of your team look?
So we've got a great team of operational support here in Southern California, and financial support. And then we recently added Dan Murray and Amy Leifer as venture partners, which was a big move for us. We added them in January after looking at lots of folks, and we couldn't be happier with the fact that they've joined us.
So I get asked a lot about how do I get into venture. It's a common question. So for you, these venture partners, are they full-time? Are they not full-time? How do they, because it's sort of a path for people who want to be more full-time in venture.
Yep. So I think that's one that's one way is to become a venture partner. I think, for us, a venture partner means, we've got some tremendous athletes. They have full-time gigs already, and they have we expect to get about 20% of their time over the course of a year. They're part of our partner meeting every Tuesday, and they work with us kind of on diligence and other calls as well.
Got it. And is Kevin also in Pasadena? So you guys your office is in Pasadena, which is one of the things I like best.
We love Pasadena, yeah. So Calibrate Intergalactic headquarters is in Pasadena, and it's been here since we founded the company.
And where are you from?
I was born and raised in Fresno, California, up in the Central Valley.
Oh, Fresno.
What do your parents do? How'd you end up in Fresno?
Well, I was born there. That's how I ended up there. My parents, my mom was a school teacher when I was growing up, and she's now a children's author. And my dad has been in the mortgage banking and real estate business his career. So it's been a fun run.
Okay, Jason, I don't have any more questions. David, you got anything else?
No, this has been great.
Yeah, thanks for playing along. Well, Jason, thank you so much. And we look forward to going over all of our advanced automation companies with you in the near future.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.